And so, again, that was an area that we very much talked to the chief executives about earlier this week, but how we can collectively do some more work to try and improve the experience for that large group of patients, actually, and a number of options kind of on the table for being able to improve that service. The other thing I was just going to pull out, because we touched on it slightly in terms of the question from the public earlier, and that was just our sickness levels. So they are higher in December than they've been for a while. Now, you would expect a kind of a seasonal variation. We know that, but we had a conversation yesterday in executives that probably, as we think about our plans for next year, we would probably want to highlight and pull out further consideration, what is it that we want to do? Because we know in some areas of the organisation actually it's very good, but you'll see in the MIQPR we do have high sickness rates in some parts of our, particularly some of our control centre areas. So what more can we collectively do to support people's well-being and to help them to be in work? So that's an area of focus, I think, that we want to kind of re-shine a light on in the next 12 months, certainly. So those are the things I was just going to pull out. The rest, as you will have read, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Rachel. No, open for questions. Perhaps I'll start while people are gathering thoughts on the sickness. It will be interesting. I mean, I'm proud of this table, but at some point it would be interesting to get a bit more of a feel for the breakdown within different populations, because you would expect sickness rates to vary, and particularly in contact centres, because of the nature of contact centres, might be higher there. And it would be possibly a bit more comforting if we knew that there was slightly higher there, but it was, back to the 6% in other areas, maybe. And the other thought that went through my mind while you were talking was only contact centres. It's very difficult to know when you're trying to set targets about how effective call centres should be. And I know from experience in other environments that operate call centres that we start with ideas about call answering times and abandonment rates and lengths of calls. But then what you find is, in inexperience, very often your call length goes up. Therefore, that has negative impact on other things. So actually, I think you have to take all this in the round. And what really matters is the quality of the outcome from the caller. And generally, I think it's the case that if people get a good outcome, that they wait a bit longer is not really a very relevant fact. Obviously, wait for hours, but whether you answer your call in 6 rings or 20 rings, if they get a good answer, then that's what matters. So it's just really difficult to know where you should set some of these targets. But you do have to be willing to flex them because experience changes. So any other questions or comments around MIQPR? If not, we'll Kerry. Sorry, Kerry. Good.
No problem. So I wanted to mention the sickness as well. So Colin and I have been having a separate conversation about it, because it is a bit worrying, because we've been doing quite well and it just feels that the trend is going in the other direction. And of course, there's good reason for some of that. And it's understanding then in the different directorates and different services what the triggers and keeping people well at work. So just some assurance around that obviously it'll be a priority for us at people and culture, but I think it is a little bit worrying. So I wondered whether Carl wanted to say anything more about that. I'd welcome that. But then my other point was on 111, and so of course the commissioning amount is the commissioning amount. We can't change that, but we've talked about in the past, it's hard to measure the risk in that, isn't it? And so I support the fact that we're going to look at more digital solutions. I'm just wondering what the lessons are from other 111 services and how I suppose what we've learned and what's been learned in other similar services to ensure that we can still deliver a quality service.
We'll come back on the issue and then we'll pick up the one.
Yeah, no problem. So just to give the board some assurance, I think there's a number of the committees that have commented on the sickness. It was picked up in Finance and Performance Committee by NEDS. What I would say is I think we need to just be mindful that we don't look in isolated months. So we are tracking the seasonal and sort of community norms. Across Wales, the absence rates have gone up. Across the ambulance sector, it's gone up. We are tracking in the higher quartile for ambulance sectors. But I would say the amount of change that's gone on in the organisation creates a certain amount of stability or instability that then leads to anxiety and also change, and also putting that across multiple teams. So where at once we found it was our frontline EMS crews, what we're now finding is that there's significant overruns or potential burnouts within our corporate teams. We've had quite high turnover. So what we're looking at is making sure we're taking that holistic approach. Whilst we have a really robust health and wellbeing plan, we can't lose sight of what we're doing within the absence space. But I would exercise caution. If we look back 5 years, we were at a 13.5% high. I don't want us tracking back towards that. That's not helpful. It's not sustainable. I think we need to look at how we're supporting our people holistically. We need to look at that productivity and efficiency part as well, because actually when people aren't here, they're not delivering. So how we're positioning that with the organisation moving forward with my financial sustainability hat on is going to be in terms of looking at just percentages. We're going to actually articulate and break down the financial costs within teams so we can just remind our people actually the financial impact and the efficiency lost when people aren't at work. What we don't want is for those that are off sick to feel that there's undue pressure to come back before they're ready. We have a range of proactive mechanisms in place to support people at work. So we do deep dives for People and Culture Committee. That will continue. And I think it is right and proper that we have a set note on our IMTP to make sure we keep sight of that.
That's great. And do you want to come in, Emma, or somebody on the 111?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the 111, Kerry, one of the things we definitely are seeing with our JCC is you get a budget. You know, we don't commission you to spend X on this, Y on that, and Z on this. We might get additionality money like we talked about this morning around falls, but the view is you get a budget, and how you want to spend your budget is entirely a matter for you. So I think the piece for me then about that lens, particularly looking into the next financial year, is us being really clear as a board about what are our greatest risks, and what are the things then that we want to, how do we want to spend our budget in terms of that risk. So for example, you know, would we put more investment in 111 to reduce call abandonment, but that might come at a cost of maybe something in the emergency space of the 9s. And I suppose we would then say, actually, the 9s we know are likely to be an emergency call. 1s is kind of a wraparound, isn't it, to GP out of hours. It's morphed into many things. So I do think there's a piece about us needing to just, we're going to have to offset some spends and decide where we want to focus our budget. In terms of lessons learned, I think England is very different because there's a lot of private providers for 111. So it's quite difficult to compare apples and pears. Scotland has its own national 111 service, which is NHS 24. And in April, we will be going and visiting Scotland Ambulance and Scottish 111 to have a little look at what they're doing. Early conversations I've had with the CEO in Scotland, they have, very similar to how we negotiated different framework for our ambulance performance, they've done the same for 111. So they did a huge piece of engagement with the public that said, look, are you really that worried that we're not answering your call in 6 seconds? Or would you prefer to know that you're going to get the right call back at a certain point in time? And is that what you want to do? And as a consequence, they have a totally different performance framework. So I'm digging that out from them. And we've already sort of started conversations with the JCC about maybe we need to think about 111 being more about clinical outcomes rather than that to those time metrics again. So I don't think we'll resolve that this financial year, but I'm hoping it will be a conversation into next financial year.
Right, thank you.
Okay. I think if we are done on that, we can stay with MIQPR, staying with IMTP, but we do again, just for item number 12, which is the assurance on the work you're doing for next year.
Yeah, this is a Q3 assurance on this year. So obviously the paper is read, it's been discussed at the Finance and Performance Committee. So I think the one thing I would mention is that it says in this paper, it was just due to timing, it hadn't been discussed at STB prior to the timing of the Finance Performance Committee. So we now have STB earlier this week. So we were able to, directors were able to talk through in a bit more detail those deliverables which were in a red status, but also those which were in an amber status. And I think what we concentrated on, I guess, was the risks, to the organisation in terms of some of those delays. We noted that some of them probably were delays, but weren't necessarily providing at very high risk. And some of them we were kind of very conscious that, and looking forward to next year, that there are some things that we put into our IMTP, that we put a lot into the IMTP, and the capacity to do everything within the timescales that we said was constrained. And as Emma has noted before, we're very much trying to reduce the number of deliverables this year. So we've got a smaller number of things that we're very confident in, that we have got the capacity and the time to deliver within the year. So we had a good discussion with directors in terms of those. But I mean, just generally, despite the fact that there's a lot of deliverables and that we have got some that have slipped, there is really good progress on the majority of the deliverables. The number of completed, many are on track or just slightly off track, and some really good progress being made. I understand that the one conversation at FPC was that in the way that we currently configured this report, we've done it around the CMT programme and then by directorate. And actually what that doesn't allow the committee to do, or the board to do, is to see how each of these plays into our strategic objectives. So we'll be refining this report going forwards. I mean, the IMTP itself, as you know, is completely done on the basis of strategic objectives. So the way that we report should be the same. So we'll do that going forward. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. So progress on TP delivery. Yeah.
Great, and thanks to Rachel and the team. I had a good look at this on FPC, and just bit of a request and a marker going down. I love a highlight table, and of course the highlight report now, for example, just the CMT is some 28 pages. So that's for FPC. So I think on item on 12 on the report, we've got the table 1. I think it's a really useful overview for board and see where are we on the work streams overall. So I think there's an opportunity to develop that a bit more in line with the principles we're following for the MIQPR, to sort of say, well, if it's green, don't need a narrative, but if we're talking about amber, some explanation on that might be helpful for the board. And then at FPC, perhaps we can take the opportunity to delve into, because we can't delve into it, or nor should we, because that we've got the relevant boards for that. But I noticed, obviously, we've highlighted about the progress made on the benefits realisation plan. So perhaps for the next FPC, we could have a bit more of a look on that, I think, which would be really helpful. And we'll also have the outcome of the CMT audit. So I think just a bit of a plea for me on the focus for the next FPC that we can then filter up to board will be around those two aspects: benefits realisation, and I think now CMT.
Lovely. Thank you.
Hey.
Thanks, Rachel. Just picking up a point you made in point 18 about capacity issues within the digital service.
Yeah.
And how we're going to manage that, particularly given some of our strategic objectives are very focused on digital.
I mean, I'll ask Leanne to come in a second now, but certainly one of the conversations we had yesterday, we had an extended session as an executive team on next year's IMTP, and one of the things we talked about was the dependencies between each of us. Digital is one directorate, but all of the directorates are impacted by organisation-wide deliverables, and Emma has suggested the use of a matrix, which we'll do. So that, I think, is a mechanism that will help us as we look forward to say, are we planning these things in a sequence that is feasible for every directorate? But Leanne might want to come in specifically on digital.
Yeah, it is an ongoing challenge, just because we have a number of priorities that have taken up a lot of the IBS capacity for several months. So the ambulance performance very much sort of detracted a lot from the deliverables that we detracted at the moment. But taken us away from some of the deliverables that we've planned in for the year. It also consumes pretty much all of the skills and different professions within the IDS team. So from our kind of back-end data engineering, our front-end analysts, our IG team. So it covers kind of everybody, which means the planning in and the sequencing gets more complex, as Rachel said. We have looked forward and done that dependency mapping with your team, Rachel, which has been great. We've also had quite significant investment over a couple of years in the IDS team. And that's just come into fruition now, where lots of those posts now are filled, the team are being onboarded, they're getting up to speed with some of the strategic deliverables. So we are starting to see an increase in pace and capacity within the team, but it is still a threat, I would say. And particularly we're doing a lot of thinking about the next year to make sure that we're planned appropriately.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments to Rachel? No. In that case, let's move on then. Finance, item 13.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the paper as read. Again, it's a write-up of a presentation that F&P received last week. F&P received the detailed paper of month 8 due to time, and then it was updated on the month 9 position by a slide deck, which is the write-up of. I'll only call out two items, if I may, please. You'll see the shift then, I bet, between month 8 and month 9 in terms of the position and the improvement within that, which is predominantly driven by the government funding being made available to us in December. So once we close, just after we closed the month 8 position, for some of the increasing costs that we were recognising in our position and carrying as a risk around in-year increases in relation to the Welsh Risk Pool contribution. So government have now across NHS Wales released money into the system for all organisations to have that in-year increase covered off. So that's allowed us to do a couple of things. It's allowed us to de-risk some of our position. We were carrying some risks through into this stage of the year that we would ideally not have been carrying still at this stage. So it's allowed us to do that. It's allowed us to offset some of the mitigations that we thought we might have to put in place around the balance sheet potentially to manage that in year. And through Q4 now, what it might allow us to do, we're still working through this now post the month 9, and as we go into month 10 reporting in the next week or so, accelerate a small amount, very small amount, but a small amount of spend that might have hit into next year. And obviously we come back to next year in a bit, but it's allowed us to potentially do a little bit on that as well. So obviously that's clearly welcomed. The only other thing I wanted to just highlight before anybody asks me is the profile of spend in terms of capital, which is always an interesting one. And it was interesting, actually. It was quite reassuring up to a point. Is that I directors of finance last Friday across NHS Wales, and the finance director of NHS Wales government raised it to all DOFs that our current kind of pattern of spend in terms of how much we spent in the first 3 quarters and what we'll shift in cash terms in terms of Q4 is not out of kilter with anybody else's. But obviously when you multiply that up across the whole of the NHS Wales capital programme, there's some big numbers going to be spent in Q4 now. Nobody said that there was a risk around that in terms of NHS Wales delivering on that. And again, just to provide from our perspective board assurance that we've run that round again. We had our capital management board last week. We've been through it at a very detailed level. Clearly there's some significant amounts within there that are specific schemes that we know will deliver in Q4. A lot of it is the vehicles which are in train, and we know we got good progress around the conversions of them, and when they land with us, the cost will be able to be accrued into this year. And there's a number of estate schemes that are very much on track now to deliver in the next couple of weeks, and the costs will go up significantly. So we've got every confidence. We had our capital review meeting with government earlier this week, so we've provided the assurance to them as well that we will come as close as we can. We have a pretty good track record of balancing this very, very close to the wire, and we have every confidence we will do that again this year. And that does include a little bit. You'll see a couple of pots of additional monies that's been made available to us for vehicles and for digital in Q4 as well, which is a bit of year-end money, if you like, from government in that perspective, which again is welcomed. So that was the only 2 areas, Colin, I was probably going to highlight from the report, but obviously, as ever, happy to take any questions. Of course.
Good, thanks, Chris. Any questions looking around the table?
Just in relation to the vacancy still being held savings, we got a breakdown of the whole-time equivalents rather than just financial side and directorates.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. We can have, yeah, actually hold the thought, because some of the stuff we were looking at in terms of where we're having to consider some of the supporting information that we need as part of framing next year's plan will include a little bit of that. So we'll have a conversation about some of that no doubt later as well. But yeah, the answer, Damon, is yes, we have got it. And also some analysis of how some of them have tracked over a period of time as well. So that'll be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. Peter, did you?
I'll just come in with an observation, actually, just for reassurance. Clearly, it's quite a way into the year now, so the risk of not achieving the balanced budget clearly diminishes as each month passes. So the fact that we are now forecasting, balanced budget, I think is to everybody's credit across the organisation. So well done, everybody, on the revenue side. On the capital, don't forget we had double the allocation for fleet, so it's been. We shouldn't forget that. Getting the money out the door is a priority. When you double the amount you've got in previous years, it makes it more difficult. So again, well done to the team, because procuring vehicles isn't just procuring them, it's commission them, it's getting a spec right and a whole host of other things. So that's commendable as well. The only point I would raise in paragraph 6, the split between recurrent and non-recurrent savings. Great that we're going to achieve this year, but in terms of going forward, the level of recurrent savings, we just need to keep an eye on, because that's clearly going to be an area when we do come to talk about next year's budget, it's going to be challenging. So it's really just a plea that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we probably are going to need an increased level of recurrent savings going forward. But well done. In terms of this year, clearly you're on target to achieve it. So well done.
Good. Yes, Julia.
Yeah, we had a day yesterday as execs looking at both the future IMTP and the financial plan, which we'll come to later on today as well. And one of the things that we have all agreed is that if we keep adding non-recurrent savings, we are saving up a real problem for us going forward. And we already know it's going to be difficult to meet our financial plan for this year. So we'll need to change some of our decisions are almost our cultural decisions. So we hold a lot of vacancies. We're going to need to delete vacancies, so we're going to have to do things that we do just slightly differently and say, okay, well, we're just going to have to not have that particular vacancy, because that's, for me, that's where a lot of our non-recurrent is, in this vacancy drift. We can't drift anymore. We just have to close it out. So I think next year will be different for the organisation. It will feel different for managers, and we'll be as supportive as we can. But we're doing a huge amount of work with our senior leadership community that we met about a week or so ago. We've got cross-directorate support in terms of both Chris and Carl leading the financial sustainability programme. But it's really important that our senior leaders hear a different message. Because I've worked in many systems where we've not tackled the non-recurrent, and then suddenly it hits us like a brick wall, and we start, and then the decisions are even harder than if you'd incrementally made them. So I think Chris has been a fantastic support, as has Ed, in terms of changing that narrative and saying we'll have to do things a bit differently.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from Chris? Papers to note? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to item number 14, which is structured assessment. We're going to invite Pierre to join us. I think, are you there on the screen? Cheers.
I'll just hold hands.
Good morning. Oh, no, good afternoon.
Am I in?
Yes, you are. Hello.
Morning. Well done, everyone.
Good morning and good afternoon. I think actually now, so good afternoon and welcome, and hand straight over to you to give us a review. We've seen the structured assessment. We'll of course take that as read, but I'm sure you want to bring out a few highlights. Then we'll go to questions in the usual way.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So the structured assessment for 2025 was reported to the audit committee before Christmas. So I'll just highlight some of the key points. for the board to consider today. So the structured assessment is an annual assessment of board and committee effectiveness, systems of assurance, including things like risk and performance management, strategic planning and financial management. So the key findings for our review in 2025, in relation to board effectiveness and governance, we found that the board is effective with strong governance and ongoing improvement. Meetings were well managed and focused, and governance is well supported by processes, although we know that there's a backlog of outdated policies which the Trust is continuing to work to address. In relation to assurance and risk management, we found that the BAF is improving, although there's scope to increase the oversight of risks to make it easier to recognise changes to risk scores. In relation to the strategic planning and finance, we noted that the IMTP and wellbeing objectives are in place, with a long-term strategy refresh set to begin this year. The Trust met its financial duties in 24-25, broke even and reduced non-recurrent savings reliance with improved reporting and oversight. However, recognising the increase in financial pressure across NHS Wales and beyond, there's a need for the Trust to continually challenge itself on whether its strategic plans are realistic and financially feasible. All outstanding recommendations from previous structured assessments and our work on cost savings arrangements in 2024 had been completed when we did this structured assessment, which demonstrates, in our view, the Trust's commitment to continuous improvement. We reviewed the Trust's management response in relation to the recommendations, and we felt that the Trust had responded really well with reasonable timelines put in place. So that's all I was going to say on the structured assessment, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Claire. So, open to questions around the table. Trish?
Mine wasn't a question, just, I guess, thanks to Claire and to the team as well for another really positive structured assessment. And I think that, you know, we've accepted all of those recommendations have been accepted. We've, as you say, got some sound management responses there. ARAC will track most of them, with Quest tracking the one related to the quality plan. I think just something on the reporting of issues with timely submissions of board and committee papers. It doesn't happen that often, and we do have a process in place whereby if there is a late payment, it is a late payment, a late paper. It is for the chair to make that call. But I think having this brought through as a governance report through to ARAC helps, because sometimes, you know, with all these things, sometimes there's a bit of drift, and I think that really helps bring that back as well. And there are very often, you know, very cogent reasons why a paper is late, and actually that might be helpful for the committee as well. So I think it's just balancing that.
Thanks, Trish. Any other questions? Hey.
I've got a couple of questions, if I may. Sorry. So there was mention of the outdated policies. I just wanted to ask what the plan is to address that.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, sure. So the audit committee have had, we usually report biannually to the audit committee on the policy program, but because it slipped, we're now reporting each quarter. And the program has changed because of capacity constraints. So we recently readjusted the prioritization of the program. It picked up very nicely through December and January as well. So we've got quite a few policies going through. But there really is an issue with the soup to nuts process of policy that we really need to address. And that's the only way we're really going to get really significant improvement on this. So that's in the plan for next year, is what are the process improvements we can make? Because a lot of these policies may not need to be policies. And so it's what's a policy, what's a procedure, do you have them together? What's the, because some of them can take 6 to 9 months, which is way too long, and looking at delegated authority to approve these. So it's a real shake-up of that. I think we're just under 60% now, so actually still made quite a good inroad. But I think that, you know, sometimes we just need to make sure that we're not running so hot for things that actually there may not be so much of a priority. So there is a prioritization in that, and ARAC will get another paper on this in March as well. But we're not going to reach the 85%, which I think was ambitious in any event.
Right.
Sorry.
And I just had another question about data quality. So how are things looking with data quality? and how are we managing the poor attendance at the quality management group?
So I'll hand over to Leanne on the data quality issues and the quality management group that sits within.
In general, so for data quality across the organisation, we previously only had a part-time professional in that space looking after and guiding us across everything in the organisation. Given the recent investment in the last couple of years in digital, we've now got a team of data quality assurance managers, a small team, but a team, and we've also built with that team an e-learning module to help build awareness and education across the organisation so that everyone can take collective ownership of data quality more broadly. This year, we've managed to re-establish our information management, our information owners management group. So those that are closest to systems that collect the information are able to kind of upskill and take that responsibility on with support from our IG and quality team. So I think that strategically, we're trying to put in place the right support to help the organisation and staff manage it themselves. And I would say that we've also got a data literacy, which I think is a bit of a broader topic, but a data literacy ambition within digital and our digital plan as well that will take us a bit further forward in future.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just so I think we recognise that there's been quite a lot of strategic priorities across the last year, and the colleagues who attend the QMG are often also the colleagues who have to be in multiple other places in similar events. So there were some changes and some efforts made by the team, but more rotational approach. So the cycle of business it's going through, which means that not everybody has to attend every meeting all of the time. But there have been slight adjustment to the way in which the business cycle operates. I think as we move out of the work required for phase 1 and phase 2 and the CMT, all of those things. So the 2 phases under the performance framework, the clinical model transformation. As we start to move into an embedded place, hopefully we'll release a bit more capacity, and colleagues around the table here, the exec colleagues, will enable their teams to be in a better place to respond to that. There's also going to put my slightly my cheek and note that we have an HIW desktop review, which is requiring us to pull everything together, and QMG is the route through which we achieve that. So I'm sure that will help to incentivise and enable.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Peter,
Just an observation as chair of ARAP, when we received the report before Christmas, firstly, we thank Leah and her team for a very good report. So thank you, Audit Wales. I thought it was an excellent report. And for us as a board, clearly it's reassuring to read that, to quite the report, we have an effective board supported by good governance arrangements. The 4 findings, I think, are practical. They will be implemented and monitored, as you've heard. But I think the final point I'd make is that Audit Wales do recognise we are on a journey and we continue to improve. And for me, that's been shown today by both the MIQPR and the IMTP, where it's clear that, you know, I think the senior management are very much open to what do we as a board need to have as assurance? How could it be improved? How could the data be presented in such a way that we can get the assurance? So I think the fact that we're on the continuous improvement journey at the same time as the myriad challenges that are going across the organisation certainly gives me an awful lot of reassurance in terms of our continual development in this area. So I really, really welcome this report and the collective well done to everybody who's contributed, and thanks to Audit Wales as well.
Thank you, Peter. Don't see any other hands up. I would just say again, you know, on behalf of the board, thanks very much. It's comforting to read it. It's comforting. I think it was the opening paragraph that starts off to say that the 4 recommendations from last year were all properly completed. It's always nice to see that as a kind of an opening paragraph. And the 4 recommendations from this year are very straightforward, and I've no concerns that they won't be delivered as well. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in due course. Thank you. Okay, let's move on, if we may then, to item 15, which is to Trish. It's quality governance review.
Thank you. So otherwise known as effectiveness review. So you'll remember in 24-25, we took a real deep dive into the committee's terms of reference and their assurance reporting. And so the audit committee challenged us to focus this year more so on the framework of the committees because we had done such a deep dive previously. So we set about some project objectives, some things that fell out of the 24-25 effectiveness reviews. And key to that was aligning committees and remits to the 6 strategic objectives, but also improving efficiency, streamlining, and making sure we had the right people in the right meetings. So we went through a number of options, and we've got a preferred option here, which is here for approval by the board. That reduces the number of committees from 7 to 6, and a quorum of NEDs from 4 NEDs on each committee and a quorum of 3. Currently we have 2. This sees really the winding up of the Academic Partnership Committee that was established a few years ago to support us getting university trust status, of which we were successful doing. And it poses a redistribution of the Academic Partnership Committee remit of research, innovation, education partnerships, commercial partnerships to Finance and Performance Committee and the People and Culture Committee. Remit adjustments are also proposed to ARAC around, because we're not going to overload one committee. That doesn't help us at all. So some of the streamlining to ARAC will be around resilience, cyber, EPRR, information governance. The option meets the project's objectives, including that improved quoracy for NEDs, because what we found is that where there are 2 non-executive directors and 1 is chairing, it can be quite difficult. And so we're striving to increase that, trying to balance off the number of commitments our non-executive directors have. Having said that, we've started a board development program with the Good Governance Institute. They started this month. Part of that scope will be also to look at the work we've done and to see whether the spread of committees is appropriate. And you'll see in this pack, there's an Annex 1, which gives you all of the delegated remits, all of the delegated responsibilities of the board. And I guess what we did as a subcommittee was try and shuffle the decks of those, because throughout each committee last year, we said these are absolutely the things that we need to look at. So we'll ask Good Governance Institute to look at that as well. So ARAC's view was making major changes before that work is completed would be a bit premature. So whilst our recommendation is still on option 1, we'd be seeking to have that deferred, particularly those big changes to Finance and Performance Committee and ARAC and APC, and the increasing of the NED membership until we've gone through that exercise. And the intention is that Good Governance Institute will come and see us at the April board development, and then it's expected that we'll have data reported in May. So we won't have to wait too long. Academic Partnership Committee will continue to meet until such time as we move that remit, and they're going to be meeting twice a year, focusing just on research so that we don't lose that continuity of approach. In addition, all the board committees other than the Audit Committee have undertaken their quality governance reviews. You've got all of their terms of reference here. There's only minor amendments made. As I say, we had quite an intensive review last year. And I think what you see as well through this program is that we've continued to improve right through the year. We don't wait for an effectiveness review. There's lots that we're doing throughout the year, and you can see that through the structured assessment as well. So it's not a once and done for us. So it's here really to note what we've considered, to approve option 1, but also to approve that be deferred, if you like. So it's an approval with a caveat. And then the terms of reference for all committees except for Charity Committee, which we approved earlier in Corporate Trustees, and ARAC, which will come next, because we need to go through the National Audit Office Toolkit, which is about 188 questions, which a few of us went through the other day. Also the approved really an approach to board effectiveness this year, which is actually our Good Governance Institute review, because they will do a survey. So I won't be proposing anything separate, otherwise we'd just be duplicating.
Okay. Any questions, comments to Trish? Yes.
Just a quick one. It's just about terminology, Trish, in terms of the terms of reference, where we talk about members and prescribed attendees. And the prescribed attendees then are effectively the exec directors, trade union partners, etc. Am I right then that as they don't have to be there? It's just the word prescribed makes me go, oh, that list of people must attend, but actually it doesn't look like they need to.
Yeah, so they are members of that committee. So our standing orders say that only non-executive directors can be members.
That's correct.
And so that's the delineation. And there's a context setter just above that says that's why we have that. But what we've said as a committee, we need those non-executive directors, but we also need all those prescribed attendees to get through that business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think my sense is that to virtually have every executive director in every single committee feels like that's quite heavy. So if the NEDs are in agreement, I think that as I sort of try to move into the sense of we've all got a collective leadership, shared accountability, that we might look at what's on agendas. I mean, absolutely would I expect the people director to be at the people committee? Yes. But actually, I think we should try to be a bit more flex, just in terms of the pressures that we're under, in terms of what we're trying to deliver, and actually just accepting a bit about we're all accountable and we're shared leadership. So I think if we can be agile around that and look at agendas in advance, I think that would be useful.
Yeah, and that's what I've started to do as well, is actually send out to directors the current membership. And I think that's why I've also asked that when that comes back into committees, if the board can be comfortable that committees will decide and have a look at that, because I'm with you as well. I think that there's some efficiencies we can get there, but I think it will also be a matter for the committee to be comfortable that they have the people around the table that they want around the table.
Absolutely.
So yes.
But I think equally as well, I am a great advocate for committees being a great development space, particularly for deputies, when we're thinking about succession planning. So I think what I'm hearing is there's general nods around the table that yes, we could start to be a bit more flexible and be a bit more pragmatic about the use of time, etc. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I wanted to come in strong support actually of what Anna's said, particularly to share with you, and I appreciate things with academic partnerships are on the decline as we've really delivered what it was set up to do. We have found immense value in having people who, let me say, are closer to doing the doing with which we're concerned, coming and speaking to us on particular items. We are always very grateful for our exec director colleagues, but we recognise that you spin many, many plates. And actually, not only is it a good development opportunity for deputies, it has been of huge benefit to us as a committee to hear directly from those who have got that detailed knowledge kind of on the tip of their tongue. The other thing that we've found that has been a real positive is the convening role that the committee can then play in increasing collaboration between departments who might not always automatically have that connectivity. So I think not only in terms of safeguarding some of the time of our exec directors, but there are also real benefits in terms of the quality of discussion and decision making at committee. But yeah, would heartily support that as a way forward.
Jane. Good. Okay. So I don't see any other hands up anywhere. So just to, we asked to note this, there are some approvals. We're approving the changes to terms of the number of committees. Don't need to read those out, I think. And we're approving the proposed full governance review. Take place, kind of a substitution arrangement. And then in terms of you. All good with that? We are. Excellent. So we move on to number 16, which is still the new bridge. Governance report. Calendar.
So there's only two things here. There's approval of application of the trust seal to a number of leases and land transfers. So you've got them set out there. 2.1.2, just for the record, is two sealings. It's to the lease agreement and to the land transfer. And we have to have these coming here because our standing orders requires that the board must approve the sealings of these documents. So we'll do that in the break, Colin. The other is the 2026-27 plus the 27-28 committee dates. We've done 2 years just so that we can get ahead. Now, they may need some adjusting, but I think it's helpful even if it's an 18-month period, but we've done that. You will already have seen a flurry of invites for 26-27. After probably next week, we'll start the 27-28 going to the diary as well. So they're here for things.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a question on that, and it's probably something to be taken away, but I think it's not a bad thing to raise in this forum. I know some of us sit on more than one sponsored body for the Welsh Government. And at the moment, my sense is that there's no connection across bodies around when things are scheduled. So I know that, for example, I've been absent to many more trust board meetings than I would have wished, because of clashes with the other Welsh Government board on which I sit, which is for Qualifications Wales. So a completely different area. You know, obviously I couldn't sit on another health board, but I wonder if there's any potential for discussion, which I imagine would have to be with the sponsored body unit, around how these things are scheduled, because when obviously we want to deliver on our responsibilities, there are particular safeguards already in place around not, you know, conflicts of interest, around not being part of multiple NHS boards. But given that there are those of us who sit on boards in different sectors, it's really frustrating not to be able to give of my best because two things are clashing.
Yes.
And again, I'm very mindful that in terms of scheduling as an administrative exercise, I'm just one member, and in that regard, you don't want to sort of mess up the system. But it does occur to me that that might be something that we need to explore more broadly, because there will be others like me across different NHS boards and Welsh Government sponsored bodies in general. And I'd be grateful if that conversation could perhaps take place.
Yeah, I mean, something we could probably bring to Directors of Corporate Governance or do a review to see, because I know certainly a lot of health boards or health bodies have their board meeting on the last Thursday of the month. There's no magic in that necessarily. It's not prescribed when we have them. So we can certainly look and see what clashes there might be.
My other board is the fourth Thursday of the month.
Yes, exactly.
So
Usually the last.
Yes.
Yeah. But we can have a look at that.
Thank you.
But it's very difficult to do all things for all people, isn't it? And that's the problem.
I completely recognise that. I think it's just in recognition also, you know, in a board meeting, we're not necessarily not here because we don't want to.
No, of course.
And it's sort of finding that finding the right balance. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of this item, we've got to receive the reports and approve the trustee and approve the committee calendar. Everybody content with those items? All right. Let's move on then to item 17, the committee reports. And we're going to start with Peter. Is there anything you want to add that we haven't talked about already?
Just one or two items, if I may, Chair. There's a number of issues we've covered off today, but Eric did the heavy lifting, if you like, on the independent examination of the charity we've heard about, the policy governance review, and the structured assessment. So that was helpful to do that. There are two other reports on the performance side from Audit Wales that is due that we're looking forward to, as are Quest and FTC, and that's part 3 of the review on unscheduled care, which has been around for quite a while now. This is going to cover national arrangements and leadership structures. There have been slight delays, but we promise this is imminent, and probably looking at Bethan because it was on Quest and ARAC in March. So we'll just give you the heads up that we're told that's imminent, as are the non-court structured assessment and the deeper dive of digital transformation, Leanne, as well. Again, we're told that's fairly imminent, so that's one that we're going to look out for. Just a final point, we received 3 internal audit reports, 2 of which were reasonable and 1 was substantial. The reasonable ones were the mandatory in-service training, which we discussed at length, and I understand that's going or will go to people and culture. And then the second one with clinical equipment, again, a reasonable assurance that, again, looking at Beth, and I think that is or has gone to quite a further analysis. And we're finishing on really good news. The IMTP was subject to an internal audit, and that achieved substantial assurance. So that's really opportune and timely, given the fact that we're right bang in the middle of the current IMTP process. And that went to FPC, Jane, didn't it, in November, and was warmly received. Apart from that, Chair, nothing else to add. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Peter. Any questions to Peter? No. The next one is the Remuneration Committee, which I duly chair. There's nothing significant to report to board from that. There were no alerts. There was an advice on a settlement agreement that we made, and we had a discussion about chief exec's objectives. I don't think anything significant to report at board level. Everybody concerned with that? Next one then is going to be to Jane, Finance and Performance Committee. Anything you want to add? That we haven't talked about?
Nothing to add, thank you, Chair, because I think we've covered the IMTP, which was the alert and the advising in terms of their IT. Yeah, so nothing more to add,
Right.
but obviously open to questions.
Yeah.
If colleagues got any further questions.
Lovely. Thank you. Any questions to Jane? No. Okay. And then into Hannah, back in your partnership, please.
Not very much. I suppose just to thank people for their patience with the work we've been doing around the committee and just recognising that it is going to feel a bit different this year while we get everything in the right place. Had a couple of chairs actions which we've sorted out. I don't know if so Hayley is you'll all know is now our research champion. I don't know if you wanted to say anything, Hayley, to the research development 5-year plan.
Just that I had a thorough review, and I contributed to a board, and I think it's really good. Speaks to a lot of the Welsh Government requirements. So yeah, I'm more than happy with that. And I was telling Hannah, we've recently had an invitation for an annual R&D review in the spring, which I've been asked to attend, and I've had a couple of visits with R&D, and yeah, everything's good.
Great. Good. Any questions on that topic? No. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is a mea culpa, I think is the phrase, because your incompetent chair missed something. So I'm going to have to wind you all back, if I may, please, to item number 14. And we need to, if Claire is still with us, is she still with us?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Claire, my apologies, because there were two parts, and I missed the second part. There were two parts of the things that you were asking us to look at. We dealt with structured assessment, but we didn't deal with the Audit Wales annual audit summary. So shall we just come back to you for that moment?
No problem. A nice surprise for you at the end that you've got an extra audit report. I'm sure you're thrilled. Lovely. It's a brief one, this. So the annual audit summary is just that. It summarises our audit programme over 2025. So just to pull your attention to the audit of the accounts is on page 6. We issued an unqualified true and fair opinion and an unqualified regularity opinion with no uncorrected misstatements and no significant issues to report. On page 10, there's structured assessment, which I won't repeat, given that we've covered that. And it's page 11 summarises the urgent and emergency care review that we undertook earlier this year, which showed some really positive progress and changes that the Trust is making internally to try and influence improvements across the urgent emergency care system, but that some challenges persist in relation to handover delays and joining up data between organisations. And then Peter's already covered this really, but we've got 3 areas from the audit plan which remain in progress: the digital transformation, estates management, non-emergency patient transport services, but we are expecting those to complete very shortly and to be reported at least in draft by the end of March. So overall, the annual audit summary provides a positive picture of strong governance, compliance with high quality accounts, strategic planning, and the fact that important operational challenges are recognised and are being addressed. Finally, I'd just like to take this opportunity, importantly, to thank the Trust for working with us so well over the last 12 months, and particularly to highlight the openness and transparency of everyone at the Trust with their interactions with us. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have on that summary.
Good, thank you. And apologies again for putting it out. So any questions or comments on that second part of it?
Yes. Not so much a question as an observation. I think just in terms of recommendations around the 111 Wales and the DOS, these are areas of real focus for us as a Trust, and one that I welcome recommendations on, in the spirit that we will get the support that we're seeking from a national perspective to get to a national DOS and get the necessary infrastructure for a website that's fit for 2025.
Thanks, Liam. Okay, I think that's fine. So thanks for staying with us, Claire, and being still there. Thank goodness. Maybe the incompetent chair from further embarrassment. Right, we move on. Let's just check where we are. We're nearing the end, I think, aren't we? We are. We've completed item 17. Item 18, we just need to agree minutes of the board committees. We've got 3 minutes there, so I've been noting up not agreeing, but that's fine. If there's any questions or comments on those minutes from anybody? Okay. Any reflections on this meeting? Incompetent sharing? Everybody content? Yes, thank you very much. Any other business from anybody? No. In that case, we move to exclude the press and members of the public, so we will be moving eventually into closed session. We have a couple of items. One item on the closed session has been moved. We still have quite a meaty item on the IMGP. So we will need to take a break and then reconvene. So we'll take a lunch break now, 40 minutes break. So very neatly at 1:30. So let's reconvene at 1:30 for closed board. Thank you very much, everybody.
Chair. Today is my last day as an aspiring board member with WAST, and I want to say I am super grateful to all of you. I remember the first day I walked into this hall, I was really scared and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to react to people, but the warm welcome was super great. And from the deepest part of me, I want to say thank you. Not just because of welcoming me well, but the love, the genuine willingness to support me from every one of you is something I will not forget in a hurry. So this is just me saying thank you, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you. Good. Well, thank you. Yes, and we wish you well in your long journey.
Yes, could I just say, I don't know if everybody does know, but he's now joining us in the organisation as a member of the People and Culture Directorate. We're delighted to have him. He will be rotating around our directorate, getting exposure to all the areas, and he will be starting
24th of February.
And it's our gain. So thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Good. All right. It's not goodbye. It's hello.
Story.
Well done, everybody. Fantastic.